Well, it's 7:23 p.m. on the 31st of January, and it's been an incredible month with Olivia being with me for the first time. We last saw each other over 20 years ago. Wonderful, wonderful to be back with her again. My acquittal in the Leeds court last week. But this little video is quite a serious one, because I've been buying the Evening Post the last few nights, the Yorkshire Evening Post, because I'm in it. I've been in it, a number of articles. And last time I was in the press was during the time of Jed's accident, May 1998, and then I think it was October, when I was guilty. I pled guilty in court for Jed's accident. That was because, to be honest, it was because Bruce Hales told me to plead guilty. He said, there was no reference to justice, he just said, they will have more pity on you because you're the father. So, I've took the thing on the chin, and I've been supporting Jed with, as far as I know, the best treatment. Obviously feeling the whole thing very, very deeply, right through until he and my other son and my wife took the business off me in 2018. So the paper, yesterday's paper, here it is, front page, a system in crisis. And that is sad, because what it says in the paper is that charges for rape and sexual offences have been falling sharply for the past 6 years. The system is in crisis. So in other words, rape and sexual offences are being covered and not able to be brought to justice, which is very sad, because sexual offences are very serious, and especially paedophile ones. We are on a path to destroying victims' faith in the criminal justice system altogether. Police and the CPS have a duty to survivors who have experienced life-changing trauma. They must do better and start delivering justice. So I'm beginning to see this problem that we have, where justice isn't delivered in religious institutions, is also pervading society in general. And police are hard stretched. The Crown is hard stretched, understaffed. So the country relies on each of us to do the right thing and be fair and just ourselves. So there's less of a burden on the police, less of a burden on the judiciary service. And that involves going and being brave and confronting people who do bad things. Matthew 18 is very clear. Matthew 18 is very clear that if thy brother offend thee, go and see him between thee and him alone. And then if he doesn't listen, take others, and so on and so forth. The scripture is wonderful. So if we're going to exercise justice ourselves, in the same Yorkshire Evening Post, there's another article, Michael Gove, who I believe probably up to his neck a bit in some of the PPE stuff at the moment, but broadly he tries to do a good job, I believe. He knows of the Brethren because he came from Peterhead, I think, Aberdeen area. But he says, I just happened to buy this paper last night. Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove has said it's important to wait for all the facts before coming to a conclusion. He's speaking about Boris Johnson, actually. But that's good advice, isn't it? Wait for all the facts. And if you're presenting a case to the police, because they really do need to act, make sure you give them the balanced picture. The good as well as the bad. Those that might mitigate somebody getting into trouble as well as the bad things they've done. He says, Gove rejected, speaking to Sky News, Mr. Gove rejected the suggestion that the former Prime Minister was a liability. He said there's a letter here, a note there, a comment there. It points towards one conclusion. But he's saying, once you know all the evidence, actually, another conclusion can fairly be drawn. All the evidence. Well, the police didn't have all the evidence in my case, nor did the Crown. Mr. Gove said he could completely recognise how you can produce two pieces of evidence and a conclusion can be drawn when presented with details from a leaked Cabinet Office memo reported by the Sunday Times. But he added, I know from experience, very important experience, in the past, including when I've jumped to conclusions about people and then found that actually I've been unfair on them. Well, Michael Gove's a Christian. He had the honesty to say he's been unfair on certain people, that we just need to see all the facts. That's exactly right. He said that the Commissioner for Public Appointments was investigating to make sure that everything's completely kosher. So, I thought that was interesting. But the more sober thing that I want to mention, and I learned last Wednesday when I was acquitted and really pleased and conveying that to the press, had my photograph taken outside the court. That very same day that I was acquitted was Holocaust Memorial Day, the anniversary of the liberation of Nazi concentration and extermination camps. See, Hitler's indestructible extermination camps, well, his whole regime, let's say, murdered 6 million Jews and 5 million other people who weren't Jews. 11 million people murdered. Now, we ignore history at our own peril. So we need to fight to keep alive the promise of never again. So if things have happened in the history of your institution, it's got to be carried forward. I've spoken to a number of younger brethren in the Brethren, who I'm not going to name because they'll be in trouble for speaking to me, but they're kind of saying, look, we just want to get on and enjoy our life, it works, we've got a family, we go to meetings. I'm not interested about the history. I'm not interested in what's happened, whether your dad was withdrawn from wrongly, or John Hales was right or wrong in 1965. I just want to get on, make money and carry on with life. But can you see that we don't want a repeat of, I'm not comparing the Nazi regime to the Brethren regime, please don't get me wrong, don't misunderstand me, but we don't want a repeat of history, a bad history. We want to assess what's gone wrong in history, work out what's gone wrong, so that we can make sure it never happens again. Some people go around denying there was any Holocaust, any Nazi regime. It's completely crazy. It's propaganda. we need to take the evils of ethnic cleansing and racism that are still widespread in society. And you see, the Holocaust is a constant reminder of the depths of man's inhumanity and his infinite capacity for evil. Now, what happened was that extraordinary people stood up and made brave decisions to rescue those who were persecuted. I love reading the underground stories. I went to the Anne Frank Museum in Amsterdam when I was there on business. Very, very affecting. There's all sorts of heroes who saved people from the Nazis at great risk to themselves. I'm worried that we've all become very comfortable and we go for easy life and comfort zone, you know. But taking a risk is a good thing, especially when it's for others. And all of us have the capacity to do extraordinary things. So people did extraordinary things back then. That can happen now by challenging prejudice and working together to stop prejudice taking root in our communities. Schools should build greater empathy and foster a culture of care, broad-mindedness. Rebecca Scott wrote a book, Days of Rain, and it's coming back to me from people I know in the US that schools are studying her book to make children of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, aware of what can happen in a cult. So I would advise anyone listening to this to buy her book and just see what can happen. Michael Bachelard's got an excellent book, Behind the Exclusive Brethren. He's a journalist who got the wrong side of Bruce Ailes and was pursued legally. But it would show that the brethren are being balanced if they allowed these books into their schools and asked the children to discern, use their own capacities to discern rather than cut them off, because this is the real world. Not everyone thinks the brethren are hunky-dory, the cat's whiskers, obviously. And the reputation of the brethren is in the gutter at the moment. It really, really is. And brethren need to understand that so that they can address the things that are pulling their reputation down, you see. So we really do want people to open their eyes. And then natural empathy is a great bulwark against prejudice and persecution. We often don't see enough of it towards displaced persons. So displaced persons need empathy and kindness and love, support and succour. There's a wonderful man called Martin Capel in Leeds. He's 92. He's a Holocaust survivor. And he said, I've seen how it starts with leaders like Putin, and then humans can do terrible things unless people work together to stop them. Jeff Greaves is a brethren separation survivor. He was one of the first victims of the new eating legislation in 1961. He was withdrawn from by the Doncaster congregation. He was engaged to Helen Trevitt, who later married, at the time, betrothed, but they had to break it because he was excommunicated by the Doncaster for eating with his own family. So Helen went on to marry John Painter of Krugersdorp, South Africa. She is sister to Richard Trevitt, daughter of, I think sister to Leslie Trevitt and Sidney Trevitt. Richard is son of Leslie. Jeremy and Anthony, wonderful people, were son of Sidney. Sidney was an RAF bomber. Wonderful, wonderful, humble man. One of the best. But Jeff Greaves, back to Jeff Greaves, is a man that I have a lot to do with now. He's 90. he used to love my parents and empathise with them completely after they'd been shoved out of the Brethren in 1972. And he's gone over in videos with me his experience, and what we've come to is that the family which he was broken away from is a very, very precious entity. Probably the greatest of all institutions is the family institution. So he really, his life and soul was in the Brethren. I think he was 18 at the time. He was shoved out because of this new rule that had come in, and had to build up his wife. He's got a wonderful wife now, super kids who have really developed, and grandkids, but really developed in society and do wonderful things for lots of people. Same with my mother. After she was excommunicated in September 72, she went out, eventually pulled herself together and went out. She used to go to the Keswick Christian Conference every year, and she had scores of cards thanking her for bringing them to Christ after she'd been excommunicated. So I'm just saying that there are people around who are survivors of systems, and I really, really respect those people. They should be held in honour. Older people should be held in the greatest of respect. The John Hales used to say in the religion I used to be in, the older men set the pace. Well, I didn't see that in the last 10, 20 years, really. The wonderful older men in the Brethren who had lots of experience, like Philip Harding, Walter Dixon, one or two still alive, Mike Shorto, Martin Hecker, absolute character. These guys are not used, weren't used. Philip Harding was never used to take readings or give words, hardly. It was these younger guys who were pushing the Hales programme, which is more about business success. And the trouble is that people who are successful in business are looked at to take the readings and looked at to do the priestly visits, but they're not priests. Just because you're a successful businessman and can make money doesn't mean that you're whole and a whole person. And you know, I mean, any priest has to deal with anything sexual or anything involving paedophile has to go to the police. That's just a requirement. Now, by all means, spend time and get the balanced picture so you can go to the police to make it as easy as possible for them to do the right thing. Yes, please, every religion should work very closely with the police to lessen their burdens and make sure that the matters that they're bringing to them are not in any way impinging on the justice that they need to deliver. But there needs to be a whole lot more coordination in society so that institutions are not insular. They can demonstrate that they're working with others, other religions, even if they don't hold quite the same views, they worship God, especially if they hold Christ in esteem and regard him as a divine person. And let's not slander other institutions that are trying to do their best. And let's all work together in a concerted way to deal with evil, get it out of the system, get it out of the deal with evil, which is a part of what a religion does. I mean, that's the foundations of the Brethren system. And that means working with the authorities, because the authorities are a terror to an evil work, but they commend good work. Thank you.